Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have another exciting show for you tonight. We have a legal analyst that's going to come on and really break down some points that everyone wants to know about this case. I've been attending this trial for 3 weeks now, and it's been really tough. I get up every morning at 3 o'clock. In fact, today there was an article about me in the New York Times, and it basically tells my story about attending this trial. It's a very great trial, and I really learned a lot each day. Um, the first night before the trial started, I went down to the city. I left at 3 o'clock on Sunday, arrived at the courthouse around 5 p.m., and stayed there all the way just to secure my seat in the courtroom for the first day. For the second day, I secured my place there as well. And then for the rest of the time, I've been able to get in without any issues. I've also been able to help other people get in as well. But one thing about this case sitting there, I've noticed that each day the prosecutors are steadily dropping one shoe at a time and building a case in their belief to be racketeering. Now, when I think about racketeering, most of us think about what we see on the television, right? You think about mob bosses and drugs and profits and all these type of things. So we wonder why in the world would R. Kelly be put away for racketeering? Probably the king of R&B. He did some terrible things, but he's away pretty much for the rest of his life, you would imagine. But in this case, I've sat there, I've seen guns, I've seen drugs, I've seen baby oil, lots of baby oil, but I've only seen one defendant with a lot of people coming in, such as Cassie. Cassie has told a story just about 2.5, 3 days. She talked about Diddy. She said good things, but she said a lot of bad things, a lot of incriminating things as well. Her best friend came in and also showed how Diddy beat her. We also saw the video. The prosecutors played the video so many times just to drive home the point, and they also said that Diddy was a monster. So imagine Cassie sitting on the stand watching the video. Her husband, Alex Fine, is sitting right by the monitor over to the right, looking at this video. But in the video, they show things such as force, and that's one of the charges. Another time, they showed how Diddy beat the chef and how he wanted his executive assistant to paint a different picture and file a police report saying that the chef actually beat Diddy. And the prosecutors are trying to say that that's obstruction. So today, we're honored to have someone that's going to come on that's a legal analyst, and she's going to break down what racketeering is, what RICO means, what the Mann Act really means. She's also going to break down sex trafficking, and in her day to day teaching at a university, she deals with domestic violence. So she's going to be teaching about that as well on this channel. So let's welcome Candace Kelly.
Hey there.
Tell tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
As you said, I teach the law at Rowan University. I do a lot of things that have to do with defamation and privacy, media law, the FCC. But for the past 5 or 6 years, I've done a lot of being a legal analyst for various stations, as well as I serve as a defamation expert on various cases and do consulting in that regard. So a lot of things in and around the law. But when I graduated from law school, I went right into television at Core TV. This was a long time ago. But ever since then, I've tried to find a fine mix of the law and TV and really teaching others. My goal is to really make people understand the law so that they are not afraid of the law. Because I often find that when you're afraid, you just don't really stand up for your rights, or you get scared or petrified and you don't know what rights you are supposed to have. So congratulations, by the way, Mr. New York Times. I saw that.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you
Yes,
very
indeed.
much.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, they're talking about it. So listen, before you get into the meat and bones of all of this, tell us how you were able to attend the trial and so forth.
Well, I took the time to think to myself, all right, let me just bring this full circle. I covered Sean Combs' shooting trial in 2001. If people remember, this was with Jennifer Lopez and Jamal Shine Barrow, who eventually went to jail. He served about 8 or 9 years. And I covered that for BET. I also went to college with Sean Combs for 1 year. We had a year that overlapped. And so I thought when this came around, you know what? You have to do this. This is full circle for someone that you covered the trial with. And at that time, it was very different. In breaks, we walked along the halls with Sean Combs. It's very different than what we're doing when we go to court. He's not walking the halls, but you could talk to him, in between. And that's what he was doing. Everybody was congregating in the hallway during breaks. And I thought, you know what? I want to see this one, some 25 years later, and be a part of that, since I know about the case, I know about the law. And again, people like to learn the law, especially through celebrity cases, people who they admire. And that's when I find students especially like to learn. I might have a concept about privacy, and it might be one thing, but when I teach privacy, through a Michael Jackson case or Beyonce case, then it becomes a different story. Everybody is paying attention.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're talking about this word that's like an enigma, RICO, Racketeer, Influence, and Corruption Organization Act. What on earth is that? And how do you get one guy being charged with racketeering or RICO?
Yeah, it's a concept that sounds really big and lofty, though at the end of the day, it is big and lofty because of everything that it encompasses. But this is how I like to break it down to people. When you think about what a racket is, for example, I was in the city yesterday. I went to buy a Snapple. It was like $4. I was like, oh, that's a racket. We understand the concept of what a racket is. We might use it in our everyday lives. That this is something where I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, or that there's a scheme going on. But of course, that's a legal racket. That's fine. But then there are illegal rackets. And so for a long time on a state level, various states would address these different type of rackets. For example, maybe somebody coming by your home, knocking at your door and getting a down payment for work, and they never come back and do the work. That's a racket, right? That's a scheme. That's somebody who has an operation going that involves a lot of people, right? And someone's at the top and it trickles down. But, people who are involved in it are trying to take advantage of someone else in some type of way. So the law has always acknowledged rackets in a sense of, hey, is somebody being taken advantage of? Or maybe somebody calls you and says, I'm a member of the Policemen's Association and we're getting this money. Many times they will call you and they're not members of unions or anything of that nature. That's a racket. Okay. And so for a long time, the courts addressed this. But what was happening was that there was somebody normally who was ahead or on top of this racket, overseeing this organization that would never get touched, so that all their directions would trickle down to all the people who might be knocking at the door and trying to take your money illegally. But that person at the top actually didn't do anything but direct. And so there was this loophole that the Department of Justice and the feds really wanted to overcome. How do we get the person in charge? And at that time, we're talking 1970. So we're really talking about the mafia. And how do we get the mafia? Which many people have heard that this is why this particular law was created, for the mafia. And that is correct, because they wanted to get that crime boss, because there was this crime boss loophole where the crime boss would say, wasn't me. I didn't blow up the car. I didn't murder anybody. People were getting sentenced for the murder, for the arson, but they weren't very long sentences. But what about this whole criminal enterprise? How do we get it to stop? How do we get the crime boss? So if you think about RICO, RICO is a way for government, and it's actually US, it's 18 USC 1961 and 1968, if you want to look it up. But it is a way for the government and also states, because by the way, there are RICO statutes on a state level. There are about 33 states that have it. But when we're talking about the federal level, and the state level, the goal is, how do we get the person at the top, the crime boss, how do we bring them down? And so that's why this particular law was created. Now, not only does it allow you to get the crime boss, that's number one, but number two, the penalties are heavier. We're talking 20 years, right? So we've got one RICO allegation with Sean Combs, and that's why people are talking about, oh, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years, because that's what the statute requires, and $25,000 fine, not so much. But it also allows other people who have been hurt as a result by the RICO statute to get 3 times the damages. They call it treble damages, 3 times the damages that you would normally get. So it did a lot of things in terms of the penalties and other people who might be hurt by the law. And also, again, we have to get that crime boss. And I say that again because the second part of your question was, well, why is Sean Combs the only one who is named as a defendant? Really, Sean Combs, when we talk about this particular law, is the only one that this was intended for. Meaning that the other people probably made deals, and that's okay because they're trying to get to the crime boss. Remember, this law started out with trying to get around that crime boss loophole, is what they call it. And remember, all of the people who are part of this criminal enterprise that the Department of Justice has described in this case and other case, they are all equally responsible for the other crimes that the crime boss might have dictated down to his or her underlings. So that if I'm a security guard, or if I'm some type of, maybe you use my deli market in order to clean money, I'm just as responsible for the murders that have also been done under this particular umbrella. And that enables the government to say to somebody, listen, you're guilty of these murders and this arson and this kid, you're guilty of all these things, by the way, unless you talk. And that's why this is such a big thing in this case, because, well, everybody talked. They made their deals. Now they feel safe. It's just Sean Combs that the feds are after. Because remember, if you stop Sean Combs, well, then who's going to run the enterprise? That's why they're really concerned about Sean, and the other people below have made the deals. Now, when we think about RICO, the feds are looking for a pattern of criminal activity. You and I talked about this the other day. What's a pattern? Hey, I go to the gym every day, right? I don't, but I should. But I go to the gym. Let's say that was my pattern, all right? That's something that we kind of understand as a pattern. Their pattern in terms of the feds, and again, also on the state statute, because the state RICO laws actually mirror the federal laws. But since we're talking about the federal laws, what's a pattern? Well, if there are 30, there's a list of 35 what they call predicate crimes that if you commit to over a 10-year period, well, now you just check the 2 boxes that you need in order for you, Sean Combs, to be the one that, yes, you did in fact run a criminal enterprise, because you've got one of these offenses, be it, and I've got the list here. I mean, it could be bribery or counterfeiting or obstruction of justice, retaliating against a witness. So, and people can go online and just put in 35 predicate crimes for RICO, and you can see once the government has proven that Sean Combs's enterprise was responsible for 2 of those predicate offenses, that's a pattern. 2 over 10 years. So I'm going to pause there, but that's something people always have to grapple with, because everyday language, that's not a pattern. That's just not a pattern. If a father has to go pick up his daughter twice a year, twice every over 2 years, for visitation rights, no one's saying, yeah, he has a pattern of coming and picking up his daughter, right? We need more than that. But for the government, that is how they look at it.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Usually when I hear about a RICO, the co-conspirators, they have charges that are listed. How come in this case we don't have people with charges?
Well, at this point, the government wasn't necessarily worried about those people enough to name them, because they were not equal to Sean Combs, and they had already made deals with them. This is a very special case, all right? This is a special case because, one, people in and outside who are involved in the case right now or who might be considering to come to the stand, because remember, we have that one missing victim, they're probably weighing what are the consequences of this case if I take part. There might be a safety issue. There might be a mental health issue. There might be, I have a family issue. There might be, what if he gets out and he comes after me issue. So at this point, the government has made, there might be, hey, listen, I participated with drugs and I was involved in some of the freak offs. I don't want to get caught. The government has told all of these people, it's okay. You're not going to get charged for any of that, but come and speak to us and you'll be fine. That's why those people are not listed in the charging document or any of the case files that you see for this case. For the government, Sean Combs was enough.
Right. So you and I, we've been sitting in the courtroom together, right?
Yes.
And we're looking at the jury.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to have a hard time figuring out between RICO and racketeering and how it all works?
Well, you know, the judge gives very special instructions to the jurors, and when they, in terms of, this is what you're looking for, this is what you need in order to make this charge stick. These are instructions for the jury. They can always go into deliberations, send questions back out. They can ask for, you know, certain things to help them. If they have questions, they can ask. So let's say they're confused, because it is a lot of information. What we're doing of the jurors is we're asking them to not only take their time, but to kind of take their mental and physical well-being, because as you and I know, this is a lot of information that you just don't hear every day. But then you're also asking them to be these mini law students, right? Because you're asking them, okay, to understand what I just explained to you in the midst of all of that. Do I think that they will be able to understand it? Not fully in terms of right when they go to the room to deliberate, but the judge is going to do all that they can, all he can to make sure all of their questions are answered before they go into deliberations. And then if they have questions, there's always an open door to have that conversation, so to speak. Send a question out by paper, and you know they get the answers. It's a difficult process for a lot, but it is also something that they're taking notes for. They all take notes. They turn in those notes at the end of each day because it's a lot of information. So with that in mind, I think that they'll be able to understand it. And I think that it's been a really great civic lesson for a number of people who may not be into the law, but they're just understanding it and want to understand more because it's Sean Combs.
Okay. So I've been watching a lot of media. In fact, we're at court with a lot of people like TMZ, Law and Crime, so forth. I keep hearing everyone talk about the Mann Act, but I don't think the average American understands what does the Mann Act mean and how does it tie into the RICO and racketeering?
All right. So this is Sean Combs has two charges that are separate from the RICO statute that are called the Mann Act. The Mann Act is also known as the White Slave Traffic Act. And I just want to read exactly what it says. It's one line. It's a federal law. It criminalizes the interstate transportation of individuals for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery or any other immoral purpose across state lines, so that you can't transport someone across state lines and pay them for sex. That's the bottom line there. There are several counties in Nevada where, you know, it's legal that you pay for somebody to have to be involved in prostitution. On the federal level, you cannot cross state lines, which is why the prosecution has taken the time to show exactly where all of these offenses took place. Los Angeles, Miami, New York. There were some international offenses. So in terms of just laying down that foundation, they are checking off the boxes for that, hoping that the jury will make that stick. So that's it's a very simple, it's basically don't have a prostitute, don't take them across state lines. That's illegal. Basically, and we know prostitution is legal, especially don't do it at over state lines, because guess what? When you cross the state lines, that's when it becomes a federal offense. So that's what the Mann Act is.
Okay, so it's rare for me to talk to someone of your caliber. Just first, tell everybody again, because there's new people here. Tell them what you do and who you are.
Sure. I'm Candace Kelly. You can follow me at Candace Kelly TV, and that's CandaceKelley TV, on Instagram and also on Facebook. I do other shows. I host a show of my own that we're just launching called Power of Attorney, and there's small segments like 10 to 15 minutes about one issue. And we have a couple of shows that are in the can, but then the Sean Combs case happened, so a lot of it has been Sean Combs. But I am a professor. I've been a legal analyst for a number of years. I love defamation law. That's really my strong suit in terms of what I like to talk about. But certainly when we talk about defamation law, you can sue someone for defamation and many other things that are kind of all intertwined in here. So that's a little bit about who I am. Started out on court TV back in 1990s, whatever. But yeah, just always finding a way to integrate television and the law. So that's what I do.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're awesome. I'm so happy to have you on. You just don't know.
Oh,
So I'm having
absolutely.
a
This is fun.
that's awesome. I'm having an issue with this case sitting in the courtroom every day. Cassie is his girlfriend. They both said they loved each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's saying in some emails, I want to freak off the rest of my life. At the end of her testimony, she says, I was a sex worker, right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So she
Mm-hmm.
framed herself as a sex worker out of her own mouth. But we have real sex workers coming over having sex with her. And the first guy said he was receiving 3 to 4 thousand. And the second guy was receiving money as well. He said 800 to 1,200. He never knew why he was getting those amounts. So
Mm-hmm.
who's the sex worker here that's being transported over state lines? Is it Cassie or the sex workers?
At this point, it is both. But Cassie is the one who's a part of the charging paper. She's the one who is the victim who is saying this is what happened to me. So Cassie has framed herself as a sex worker because of that. But in addition to that, you have other people who are involved who also call themselves sex workers, and we see that has been proven in my estimation also.
Okay, so when it comes down to the RICO, right? You said that there's only two patterns that need to be established, two crimes. In this case, we've been shown force with the video, her being dragged back to a freak off, right?
Yes.
Obstruction, we saw that. We saw Kid Cudi explain the last day we were in court how burglarized his home, set his car on fire. The chef is beaten. They took guns to go down to try to, go after Suge Knight at Mel's Diner. So each day there's all of these things that are being dropped. And then we go back to court tomorrow and we have Capricorn Clark. She's going to testify that she was kidnapped. So is this a RICO or not? I mean, is it shaping up like a RICO?
No, it's absolutely shaping up like a RICO. And what we have to understand is that some of those prerequisite check boxes would be like an arson or a kidnapping. They all go to the cause and the case of the RICO. So yes, obstruction of justice, for example. There was a time where Sean Combs tried to allegedly obstruct justice. If you remember, his personal assistant said, hey, um, he asked him to fill out paperwork and lie about it and say that the woman, I believe it was Gina, was the aggressor. He said that he didn't really file any paperwork, but that would be seen as him trying to obstruct justice. You have these guns that are defaced. All right. What do you do with defaced guns? You generally deface a gun because you are trying to do something illegal. All of this goes to the cause and why we are all in court, mainly in terms of the biggest penalties, which would be the RICO Act. The other thing that you have to remember too is that during the sentencing stage, which there's a chart, there's a federal sentencing chart that the judge will take out and make a recommendation based upon a lot of things, which we can get into if you want their pre-sentencing reports, pre-sentencing investigations. And what they'll look at is whether or not some of the crimes that he committed were worsened by the fact that there was violence involved or that there were guns involved. So all of this comes into play if they get to the stage of actually what's that? What am I trying to say? The stage of actually giving him, a certain number of years. They will look at a chart. The reason why they have this chart on the federal level is because they want to make sure that anybody who is convicted on a federal level, that they're all kind of even in terms of the penalties. They don't want you to go to one jurisdiction and it be something different in terms of what you would get for a RICO statute. They try to look at whether or not the person has any previous crimes. They look at the crime itself, and then they go to mitigating factors to try to figure out, does this person have any remorse? They do a pre-sentencing investigation. I say all that to say that the guns are not going to help Sean if he is convicted in terms of these federal crimes and the chart. So when we think about that, all of it matters. And we've heard about the guns a little bit in terms of Suge Knight, but when it comes down to it, the fact that they've been involved, the guns are a part of so many people's stories. We are going to hear it if he does get sentenced, because that enhances the penalties that he will get.
Okay, so again, you and I both, we've been sitting in the courtroom. Let me tell you another issue I have with this case.
Yeah.
Sean's not making money from the RICO. How could it be a RICO and he's not making money? Sean has money from the industry. How could that be?
All right. So what RICO was saying is that, and that's another part of RICO, is that you have to make money from this. So what they're saying is that his enterprise that he is now using as a criminal enterprise, that has to make money. And in fact, during this time, he was making money. You have to really think a little bit differently to connect the dots. Remember, the government is saying that his enterprise existed for purposes of doing all of these illegal things, and that enterprise also had to have made money, which it did, whether it's his media company or Revolt or his marketing company or his record label, it made money. And all these people that he had working for Bad Boy, for example, they weren't just doing bad boy things. They were doing things that bad boys do. I had to go for that. They are watching hotel rooms. They are setting up hotel rooms. They are, driving him to Kid Cudi's house in order to break into his home or grab someone, kidnapping them, which is what it really would be under the law. This is alleged, and go to the homes. So this driver, all right, the security guards, these people in his orbit were not just trying to find talent to go platinum. They were doing these other things under the umbrella of his business, this criminal enterprise. Now, this is a reminder to folks too that when we think about RICO and what a criminal enterprise is, it doesn't have to be something that's registered as a business or an LLC. It could be 5 people who are running a ring to steal car parts across state lines and making money. Maybe 5 friends. That could still be a RICO enterprise and charged as such.
Do you think the government is trying to stretch here? Because when I think about sex trafficking, right, I think about people trying to kidnap your daughter, these little low-life guys, and they have them hauled up in hotel rooms and prostituting them out and all of that. In this case, it seemed like the women were Sean's girlfriends, or, he was somehow in love with them one way or the other. Do you think it's kind of a stretch, or you think because of the law, it's just that we don't understand the law? That's why it's kind of cloudy.
Yeah, and I was just looking up a couple of cases that I had written down to kind of bring this home a little bit. Do I think it's a stretch? I think that in terms of what the government set out to do in 1970, that people have been very, very creative about how they use this. But we have been conditioned by the media to think about kidnapping and guns and, what goes on in The Godfather and what happened with the Gambino family and how Mayor Giuliani brought down 5 families down because of the mafia. We think about the mafia because that's how the media forces us to see it. And we're trained to think about things that have nothing to do with a boyfriend and a girlfriend and people having sex. That's not what we have learned. So we have to expand our idea about these legal terms. For example, if you break and enter into someone's home, that's what they call burglary. But you actually don't have to break anything. If the door is unlocked and you go into the home and don't even steal anything, that is still a burglary in the name of the law. So it is one of those things that we have to train ourselves in and retrain ourselves in about what RICO means. Think about the college universities that parents were paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay someone to get into universities that they probably weren't qualified for. They also, these parents, we know one of them, for example, Felicity Huffman, she served some time in jail. Lori Loughlin, if people remember, this was a RICO case. There were about 54 people that were involved, and this man had a criminal enterprise and was getting paid. It was a RICO case. We know that Young Thug was a RICO case. You can go back to 1984, Michael Milken. That was a RICO case. There's a case out of Florida where police officers were charged for turning a blind eye to cocaine deals, and they were collecting money. That was a RICO case. There's a case of a judge, a couple of judges who were being paid kickbacks every time they sent a juvenile to one particular detention center. That was a RICO case. So if you're not paying attention to the headlines, you don't see that RICO actually happens a lot on state level, on the federal level. It's just something that we are trained about, and it looks totally different. It looks like gangsters sitting at a table and try to get illegal liquor and murdering somebody and blowing up people who are sitting outside on the sidewalk eating lovely Italian food, and somebody comes by and they shoot them. That's how we understand kind of the mafia, or a lot of people inside of the name of RICO. But RICO looks very, very different. Take 6ix9ine, all right? That was a RICO case also. R. Kelly, that was a RICO case also. So it's one of those things that we just have to look at in a different way.
Okay, that's good. I'd like to ask everybody, we have a lot of people in the audience, please hit the like button so we bring awareness to the video. We're getting some really good information here tonight. Again, just one more time, just tell people that are coming in who you are and what you do.
Sure. Candace Kelly at Candace Kelly TV on Instagram and also on YouTube. And I'm a legal analyst. I also teach the law, and I really like for people to understand the law so that they can be emboldened and stand up for their rights. A lot of the laws that we read about are legalese, but when you really look at it, it's stuff that anybody can understand. And I find that a lot of people are afraid of the law. So I like to inform people about it so they don't run, and they understand that they can fight for their rights because they can now speak the language. A lot of the times we just don't speak the language of the law or think that we're not qualified. You certainly are. It is all guaranteed by the Constitution. It's guaranteed by the laws of the states. You have a right to defend yourself in a proper way. And you do that by knowing the law.
Great. My name is Mel, and I've been in the courtroom every day covering this case. Candace and I both have been in the courtroom seeing everything as it unfolds, and we bring it back and share it with you. So let's get into another aspect of this case that a lot of people want to know. We're now in 2025. If this is a RICO, why on earth are we going back to 2011 when Kid Cudi is saying his car is blown up or set on fire, Molotov cocktail, his house is being burglarized? Isn't there a 10-year statute?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a 10-year time span during which those two predicate acts had to have taken place. However, another thing about the RICO law is if you can connect the dots, you can go back even before those 10 years. Just think about R. Kelly, right? They were able to go back. You can go back 30 years if you can, justify it and connect those dots to show that this was something that the defendant was involved in. So that's why we are going to Kid Cudi.
Okay. So let's talk about Cassie's mother. We saw her in court. Everybody was amazed that she's so beautiful, and they said that's where Cassie got her looks from.
Mm-hmm.
Diddy, when he heard about Kid Cudi, he had asked the parents to send him $28,000, which they took out a loan and they sent it to him. And a couple days later, he sent the money back. That's trying to be framed by the prosecution as extortion, I believe. Is that extortion?
So, anytime that you ask someone for money in order to prevent you from doing something, well, that does fit the legal definition of extortion, because what he was saying was, give me this money because I need to recoup my money. That was the main thing. I invested in Cassie and I need to recoup my money. But she also wrote her mother and said, he's threatening to release these videos. And he's also threatening to do something to Kid Cudi. And so all of that in its entirety, it feels like it's extortion adjacent, because he definitely asked the mom to do something, and it felt like if she did it, it would prevent him from releasing the videos. It wasn't as explicit as that, but it's certainly, considering all of the circumstances that he said he was going to release these videos, she felt as a mother that she was backed up against the wall enough where if I don't give him this money, he's going to do something to my daughter. He might hurt her, or he might release those videos. So it smells a little extortionish to me for sure. I think the other thing about it was that he gave the money back, and that was really to show his power and control over everybody, not just in his orbit, but in Cassie's orbit too. When you have somebody go to the bank and get out $20,000, that means that someone else actually does have a lot of power over you. And we're talking about abusive relationships. It is all about power and control. You control people economically, you can control people by using the kids, you can control people by isolating them from people in and around you. You can control people by trauma bonding. We heard about that from the forensic psychologist. In other words, you have this intimate piece of information, right? I've been beaten by this person, or I'm performing these sex acts. We're kind of really the only ones that I can only talk to you about it. So now I have to go back to you because nobody else knows. And then you bond inside of this trauma because that's the only person that you have to talk to. So I would say that when I think about all of those things, that it is definitely feeling like extortion.
Okay, when Cassie's mother left the stand, she was trying to give Diddy eye contact. She looked very aggressive. Do you think that that would affect the jury?
You know what? I think the fact that she didn't get that there was no cross examination, I think that would affect the jury a little bit more. That, hey, you know what? Let's not mess with this mother. I see this mother. Maybe she might want to give Sean a little bit of eye contact. Let me give it to that mom. Because if I'm a mom or if I'm a dad, right, you're on that jury, you can understand exactly where she's coming from. No parent wants to take pictures of bruises of their child. And so I think more so than her trying to get eye contact with Sean is the fact that there was no cross-examination done. I think that speaks volumes because she was someone who really spoke from a mother's heart. And how are you going to question that? How are you going to question any of that? They would look like they were attacking her. I mean, what were they going to ask her? Did you believe your daughter when she came? Of course she did. That's her mom. You really can't take away that kind of position of love that you have over your child. So they left her alone. And I think that speaks volumes.
Okay, so not having a law degree, just being a spectator in the courtroom, I noticed something. I want to ask you about it. I noticed that the defense tried to survive a couple of witnesses. So, Carrie Morgan,
Yes.
the prosecutor brought out how Diddy took them on trips. He beat Cassie, I believe, somewhere in Jamaica and perhaps in Italy. So when the defense came up, they didn't touch that. They didn't cross-examine her like they did Don Rashad and ask about those incidents. They basically asked her questions just to build on Diddy's personality, that he's a good guy, character, right? But
Yes.
then the prosecutors came back up on redirect and they said, so what did he do to her in Jamaica? And he beat her. Oh, we didn't bring it. And then the defense stood up. Oh, we didn't bring that up. We didn't bring that up. Is that a real strategy that most defense attorneys use?
Well, sure. I think that one of the things that they were trying to do was, remember, Carrie, she was not a very willing participant. The first thing she did was get up there and say, I don't want to be here, right? I'm here because of a subpoena. I don't want to do this. So I think that they just left her alone a little bit because she was a very compelling witness. I think that they were kind to her. But I think what are you asking? Whether or not that's a defense strategy to not bring up information that was
Yeah,
brought up on direct?
because basically the defense just stayed away from all the beatings and they just had Carrie talk about how Diddy helped her in life and not any of the vile things that we're hearing in court.
Right. And I think how much more questioning can you ask? She was very clear. She saw Sean Combs drag Cassie by the hall down, in the hall when I think she was taking too long in the bathroom. There's not too many questions that you can ask about. Why? Because she saw the beating. She was there. She heard. She saw after. Unlike Don Bashar, who you mentioned, where they started getting to the specifics, and then there were some things that didn't seem that they were very clear in terms of her memory. I would not have asked her anything because now you're highlighting more that, yeah, I saw the beating, unless you outright call her a liar and you have a way to impeach her as a witness and say, you are a liar. He didn't have anything to do to impeach that witness. Because what you always want to do on cross is you want to make the person seem like a liar. You do that by bringing up memory issues, by bringing up character issues that they might have, by bringing up consistency issues or inconsistency issues that they might have in telling the story, or maybe bias. And they really didn't do that. They didn't even do that and say, hey, you're a little biased. You got all these trips from him. Well, I mean, that was just something that he did that was nice. It wasn't anything that was any kind of quid pro quo that she was expecting from Sean Combs that she was looking for him. She's not a part of a lawsuit. She did get paid by him, but not enough of an issue to bring up and kind of impeach her credibility.
Okay. Here's another question about the defense I wanted to ask you. In the pre-conference before they brought the jury back in, I don't know exactly what they called that, but anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the defense brought up that they did not want the prosecutors bringing up the fact that Kid Cudi's dog was put into a bathroom by Diddy and traumatized, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
said
yeah.
that there would be jurors, perhaps there would be dog lovers, and they didn't want them to get caught up in the whole pet friendly thing. Is that common in court?
Definitely. Listen, pets are like people. Let's be real. We talked about this the other night. Pets are like people. People give them names. I saw one in New York City, and in the dog carriage yesterday. Oh, they treat them like little babies. So when it comes to pets, and things of that nature, that's a very sensitive topic. So they just wanted to make sure that nobody was prejudiced. At the end of the day, all right. So you're trying to get in the mind of a dog. Not that much power in there. I mean, he's kind of not central to the case. Was he traumatized? Maybe. I think he let him talk about it a little bit. But at the end of the day, it didn't make that much of a difference in terms of what was central to the case. These jurors are not going in and deliberating about that. And again, they're asked to be impartial witnesses and to put everything aside besides the facts that they've received to decide what laws were broken.
Right. So in the audience, we have Raina. It looks like Jacqueline. It says, did they end up bringing up the dog? I
They,
believe
they
they did.
they did a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. It wasn't a whole lot. So here's what I want to ask you, because Don Richard started to basically paint Diddy as a mob boss when she said he bought her and Kalina, I believe her name is, the second party on the group, and
Yes.
said he basically sat them down and says, "Hey, listen, I know, because they had saw him drag Cassie, beat her, and the skillet and all that, and he said, you could end up dead. However, on cross, the defense showed that they had eight. She had 8 interviews and never brought that up. Do you
Hmm.
think that had a big impact on the jury?
Oh, absolutely. I think that that is neither here nor there. That was her memory of what happened. As she said, she tried the best that she could, but because it was so inconsistent, how are you to know? By the end of that cross-examination by Nicole Westmoreland, she agreed with her that yes, her story has changed. Though I think that there are other parts of her testimony that were definitely more believable. But again, they were trying to get her to look like she didn't know what she was talking about on that one thing so that everything else would be put into question. I do not think that that particular piece of information about what, whether the death threat, or even whether she saw Cassie being hit by the pan or not, I don't even think that will come up in deliberation unless someone just brings it up. And I think that they will all say, we cannot use that, because she definitely was impeached in terms of that part of her testimony, in my estimation. Now, that doesn't mean she's a whole liar. I'm just saying on that one slice of that pie, they definitely did a good job of not making her seem too credible.
Okay, so again, RICO, Racketeer, Influence and Corruption Organization Act. How is he a mob boss or engaging in RICO when there's really no other mob bosses like what we see on TV or some of these other big cases like John Gotti? Basically, he's controlling the people under his payroll. Now, I just want to say this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of basketball players. We have musicians of all sorts that you would imagine they have security. They have all of these features in there. They have organization.
Right.
So how could that be RICO when you're only controlling people? I mean, you're a billionaire. You're not going to go buy baby oil, right?
Right. No, that's true.
That came
So
out in court.
that's true. So the one thing that we have to remember is that, again, this is separate from the way that we've looked at RICO, and it doesn't have anything to do with being a mob boss. It just has something to do with someone being in charge of a criminal enterprise, that through films, that criminal enterprise is generally the mob in terms of how we're introduced. But in the world of the law, it's just a criminal enterprise and these illegal acts being done under that umbrella. And that umbrella has to make money. And then again, going into the two predicate acts over a period of 10 years. So we have to detach ourselves from our idea of the mob and what this law was originally created for. And once we separate that, then you can really get into seeing, all right, what are the facts here in the Sean Combs case? But we have to get rid of the mob mentality of what's going on in this case, because it has nothing to do with the mob. It just has to do with an organization that might be allegedly doing illegal acts.
Right. Now, does it influence the case that Cassie is paying for these and also ordering these sex workers, and also the Punisher who came in this week? He said basically he was performing on her, and as he pulled away, she pulled to him, she scooched toward him. I think that that's painting a picture of her involvement. Does that really have a strong impact in helping Diddy perhaps get off?
I think it does, because I know that we haven't talked about sex trafficking, but when we think about sex trafficking, and I'm going to read this just so people understand it: individuals performing commercial sex through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Okay, this is different from the Mann Act. The Mann Act is just crossing state lines for purposes of paying somebody for sex. This is performing commercial sex through force, fraud, or coercion. Now we get into the facts that you've laid out. Was she forced? That's going to be the main question that the jury and a lot of us are grappling with. She said she liked it. Sometimes she set up these financial transactions. Sometimes she would do drugs outside of Sean Combs. Sometimes she would write these sex workers outside of Sean Combs, maybe on her own. Then I think that's where you get into the forensic psychologist, Don Hughes. Well, what is a person who is forced and thinks that they're supposed to be in this situation of abuse? What do they act like? It's very much like what's the syndrome where
Stockholm syndrome.
There we go. It's very much like the Stockholm syndrome, in a sense that now you're identifying with this person who has done these bad things to you, because mentally you're just not sure where you fit in. In fact, she said a couple times on the stand, I'm confused. Now, I'm not saying yes or no that is what I believe. What I'm saying is that those are the explanations that the jurors will have to look at. Was she someone that was being coerced? Because her emails do tell a different story. Or was she someone that was a victim of domestic violence, and mentally she was entrenched in it in a way that she really kind of became a different person. She thought that she was deserving of this, and he was so powerful and controlling that she found herself trapped and there was no way to get out of it. The psychological abuse that goes in, I assure you, jurors will be deliberating about. I mean, if you think about someone who you know that might be in a very bad abusive relationship, and you might ask yourself, why do they stay? They generally, they think they don't have options, they don't have money, but it is a psyche that goes along with it. Someone who's maybe been an alcoholic, we celebrate when they're off of alcohol and they're clean for 1 year, 2 year. I've been clean for 5 years. People love talking about and celebrating that fact. That is not how we do abusers. No one is saying, oh, okay, he was an abuser. No one talks about it, is what I'm trying to say. It's not something that also statistically abusers change. About 99% of abusers stay the exact same. And I know that because I went through a process to get certified, and I've worked with women who were victims of domestic violence. And it was an interesting thing for me to be next to someone in a hospital bed who could hardly talk because they had a busted lip and they were still going back to their husband. But there's a psychology that goes along with it that you really have to understand. And I think that Dawn, who has testified at many cases, from Harvey Weinstein to Amber Heard, to Nexum, she probably made a very good case, I think, for the jurors to contextualize why did she stay for 11 years. But it's, again, something you have to go in and think of, because people normally say, I know I would leave. I don't know, would you leave? If you're a wife married to a husband, and I'll just make the husband the abuser because it's normally how it is, even though I did help some men. And you've got 3 kids, and this weekend they've got soccer practice, or let's say Cassie, this weekend you've got a movie preview, and you're going to go visit your mom, and all your makeup, and someone's come to get you fitted. Are you really leaving right there that first time that Sean actually hits you? Like, there's a lot of things that people don't just generally leave. They hope for the best. They say, oh, well, maybe it's because he was sick, or maybe it's because he was this. Maybe it's because he was stressed. That's generally what someone in that position, you come up with excuses and then you try to fix it. Okay, well, I'll fix it. I'll do what he says. I'll be nice. I'll be kind. I'll just be, and we've heard all these things. She was very much a typical victim of domestic violence in terms of what I've experienced, not just through, being on the domestic violence response team, but other people who I know who are in situations where there is abuse.
Something I noticed about this case is that they're putting Sean at a disadvantage. I mean, I know he did horrible things. I've sat there and I can't stomach the video. Some of the things he did, I'm like, man, people actually do this. Like, you want to see a sex worker with the girl you love and all this other stuff. That's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
But they put him at a disadvantage, in my opinion, because it's almost like he has to play basketball with his ankles chained, because they're saying, oh, you can't bring up Cassie's previous bad acts. That's been a big problem in this case, that they're arguing about no previous bad acts. What's the story about previous bad acts?
So the previous bad acts, it's a part of the civil rules of procedure, whether or not you can bring up a person's previous bad acts. That's a very simplest way of putting it. What that means is that, are we going to bring up someone's bad acts in order to, what it looks like is you're saying, let's bring up this person's bad acts, because then it shows they kind of deserved it. Or it shows that this is the person who they are. When we're not on trial, or she's not on trial, to determine whether or not she is a good or bad person. So to bring up bad acts would be more prejudicial than it would be probative. All right. I mean, if you're trying to figure out something, that's one thing. Were these previous bad acts, do they really pertain to what the jurors are trying to hear right now? Or is it just going to prejudice the jurors, and it has anything to do with this? So the court is always doing a balancing act as to whether or not something has probative value or prejudicial value. And in many of the cases, when you bring up previous bad acts, I mean, do you want to bring up something from 5th grade, 10th grade, 10 years ago? Does it have anything to do with the case, or are you just trying to make this person look bad? Probative versus prejudicial. And that's why they've been, going back and forth to figure out, well, is it probative or is it prejudicial? And they're deciding along the way.
Okay, so as far as her character, right, in court, they showed that she started off with Ryan Leslie. She cheated on him with Diddy, cheated on Diddy with her current husband, and there were a couple guys along the way, like Kid Cudi. Diddy was cheating. He had a whole thing going on, right? They also showed, right, that she had gotten into an altercation over in Connecticut, pulled the girl out the bar,
Yes.
and beat her and said, "I tried to kill the bee." This is all on her. She said she was drunk. There was another case when the guy said he had a video of her that had leaked from a freak off, and she basically tells him, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to kill you, and all these type of things. Do you think that this is going to have an impact on the jury?
I do. Listen, she's done a number of things that do not make her look good. They make it look like she is a fighter, someone who can, this is good for Sean, right? This is someone who can take care of herself. She can fight. She threatened someone saying, "I will kill you." Again, it was over this video, and that would be the other side. The prosecutor, well, of course, she's scared. She's got someone who's over her and has power and control, so she's very scared about her future. On the other side, did she ever leave? All right. Again, this would be a Sean Combe argument. Why didn't she walk away? She seems like she could stand up on her own. She was taking drugs. Were these just two drug addicts that were so drugged out that they were just in a bad relationship? I think this is definitely going to be one of the biggest talking points for the jurors to try to figure out, could she leave? Could she not? Why didn't she? And was she really coerced? Let's look at those texts, emails, all of that. What was her situation? What was her state of mind? I want to say too, from the defense's side, when they bring up someone, they will bring up an equivalent of a Don Hughes. They'll bring up their own expert to talk about it. That will be very interesting to see, but the context of it is very important.
Okay, so folks, listen, I have before me and before you a legal analyst, right? And she's a sister. And this is quite beautiful, I must say. So hit the like button to show some appreciation for her coming over and really breaking down the law for us. I mean, this is a really great moment to have someone that teaches at a university. She teaches others about the law. That's amazing to me. So show a little love, hit the like, share, subscribe, or what have you. So I have the big question for you. I've been sitting in court. Diddy has come in. He speaks to us.
Yeah, very much
he thanks me. He thanks me for coming because you see I'm there pretty much every day. Quite a few of us. The other day, I think Thursday, he turned around and says, "I love all of you." Right. But here's the big question. Right. This is what I can't get over. When the case started, the defense tried to frame this as a domestic violence case, not a RICO. That was their argument. This is the direction they said they wanted to go.
That's right. They did.
He beat her. We know. So we say, okay, this is a domestic violence case. But now we're seeing along the way that he's beating other people in the path too. So how are you going to frame this as a domestic violence case when he's not just beating his lover? He's beating anybody that crosses his path that he don't like.
Right. And that is the power and control that the prosecution is trying to say he had, because he was the criminal mastermind of everything. And one of the things he did was use force and coercion to get his way. It's an argument that kind of fell apart for me, I think, during so we had 2 witnesses or 3 before we got to Cassie. And I think it started to fall apart even then for me. The other thing, there were 2 main things, is that there was somebody in the room that was waiting, a sex worker, Cassie said, at the time when she was trying to escape. So now we're not just looking at, okay, he's beating me. It did appear that she was trying to leave and he was trying to bring her back, right? I think that we can all agree that she was trying to leave, and that by some sort of force, he was trying to get her to come back. Come back to what? Sex trafficking? Was that the force? That's a big question for me. Also, the time where she said that she was on a plane with him, and he pulled up videos that she did not know that he had. This is a reminder that you're gonna continue to do for me because I'm holding these over your head. And then they immediately went to a freak off, and she felt threatened by that. So while the defense started out by making these proclamations that this was just domestic violence, if you connect all the dots that the prosecution is giving you, it looks a little different, or it could definitely look a little different. I think at the very least, they've got the Mann Act. I don't, I'm wondering if anybody can make an argument otherwise, that he didn't cross somebody across state lines for purposes of having sex and then paid for them. I don't think it's been proven otherwise. It just hasn't. Maybe they'll do it in close. Big parts of the case, jury selection, that's really where you win or lose your case. But in that closing, you can tell people about the movie, if you will, that they just saw and what the takeaways are supposed to be. And so closing argument, if they can't do it with their witnesses, the defense, they will in closing argument tell the jury the story that they want them to hear when they go back into the deliberation room.
One thing I noticed about this case is that, we're sitting right behind the family, and also there's Charlie Lucci, which he's a very interesting, nice fella, but he seems to be the long lost friend, the only one
Yeah.
showing up to support him. Does it help though that his children show up, his mother, and all of it, a host of his family? What does that tell a jury?
Well, that humanizes the defendant. That's what you want to do when you are the defense. You want to make sure that this person seems human. Their father, they're someone who adopted someone. They had children. Their son. They're a music mogul. So you humanize this person, give them the face, as opposed to they're just a sex trafficker, a beater. And when you have that family, you can connect the dots that, hey, all these people are supporting him. He's got Charlucci there too, that they see every single day. And with that in mind, it makes him look more human, someone that has a life that is more than just about all of the crazy details that we're hearing from the witness on stand. It's very important that we hear that. It's also very important that you are have some guidelines as to when you want your daughter to come in to the case. Do you want them to hear about all of the freak offs and the king nights and the wild nights? No. So it makes sense that they would leave. I think the jury would recognize that too. Oh, very nice. His daughters they're removing them to kind of protect them. That's what a father would do. I think it makes a very big difference that it humanizes them in some way.
I noticed in this case, and maybe you can't speak on it or not, but I'll just mention it. I noticed the judge appears to lead more toward prosecutors when it comes to objections and overruling. Doesn't that send a message to? I mean, I know it says something to me, to the jury.
Well, I think the judge is very fair and even-handed. I think that they're allowing the prosecution to do more because maybe they're just being better at their jobs to get information in, so that what they are asking about is not overruled. He's being very fair and even-handed, I think, in everything that he's doing. And I think that all of the attorneys, some attorneys can be really snippy and nasty, but I haven't gotten the sense of any of that from the attorneys. And if there's a time that an attorney feels like, hey, we feel like we're being overruled more, the attorney has a right to say, hey, I feel like, you're kind of penalizing us for some reason or another. And the judge would be able to explain or make their case. I think they've been very clean and honest about it. And maybe the prosecution is perhaps doing a better job in getting their information in.
Okay, so going forward, I just want to ask this, because I haven't seen a lot of paperwork as far as flying, airplane receipts, and so forth. Receipts, a lot of receipts. Will that come toward the end of a trial? Because we're not seeing a lot of things to close the gaps on this case.
So, and what are you talking about in particular? Do you mean just kind of what happened on the plane, for example?
No, let me explain.
Okay,
So Diddy had 5 houses, and
that's right.
sometimes when they didn't have a sex worker, because they were getting sex workers off Craigslist, Backpage, and the Cowboys, and any whatever the thing is, Cowboys and the Angels, or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
when they couldn't find a sex worker, they chose one they loved or liked the most, and they would fly them from New York, let's say, to L.A. We haven't seen like the actual ticket to show that they flew on a plane per se, so forth. Will we see those type of details as the trial go on, or it's not that relevant?
Oh, if I was a prosecutor, I would definitely want those receipts there to show that it actually happened. Otherwise, it could be just pure conjecture, right? Though you did have you had a sex worker yet say that he's flown? Did that first sex worker say he flew across state lines, right?
I believe so. I think he stayed in New York. He stayed local. But
Okay,
there are
because
some that will, when they framed the whole trial, they did say that there are some, and I imagine they're going to bring them out that flew over state lines. It came up. Cassie testified to it numerous times. But I'm just curious, will they show us the receipts more?
oh yeah, I definitely. They just planted those little seeds that they're letting grow, and we have 3 to 4 more weeks of people, and some of them, kind of like the Punisher, they're not going to be on there for 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. They're going to be on there for a couple of hours and they're going to get through a lot more people over these next few weeks, and we're definitely going to see the receipts. They're building.
So here's a question as far as the witnesses. Do they have to show up
Hmm.
in order to not be charged in this case?
Um. So if first of all, if they show up, they can take the fifth. If they don't show up from a subpoena, then there generally are penalties of some sort. So to answer your question, it's best that they show up. Though really, when you get someone that takes the fifth, before they get up there, it shouldn't be a surprise as an attorney. Because if they are going to take the fifth, then why even bring them? But that is their right on any state charge, on any federal charge, to say, I'm actually not going to say anything. But that doesn't do much. I mean, I forgot your original question. I just got into the witness part of it. What was your original question?
No, it's okay. We're good. You answered
Okay.
it beautifully. I'm
Okay.
cool with that. Kaplan came in because you mentioned immunity. What did that mean when I think it was right before lunch, he came in, he asked for immunity in order for him to give his testimony. So could you just break that down for the audience, what it entails, and also the proffer agreement? Because we heard about that with Keefe D with Tupac, but most of us don't quite understand immunity and proffer.
So the immunity means that you are getting into an agreement, all right, and that's the proper agreement of what we understand is going to happen if this person testifies. That if they say anything, it won't be held against them. That they're going to be given some type of leniency in terms of you're not going to be charged. We need information from you, knowing that you were there, and I'm just making this at the arson, or know that you were there at drug fueled parties, and knowing that you took cocaine yourself, right? One of his personal assistants was on ecstasy. And if you remember, Sean Combs said, yeah, I'm going to have to keep that video because there was video of him on ecstasy. That's against the law. What the courts have said and prosecutors have said is that, you know what? You can talk about anything that you want and you won't be in trouble. And this is what the agreement looks like.
Okay, so imagine, right? I'm going to ask you this, and then we're going to try to bring some people on. So if there's some
Sure.
people in the audience that wants to come up and ask questions, the only thing I ask is when you come to the stage, you have to have your camera on. We have to see that you are the real deal. So come up and ask your question. We would love to hear from you. Please hit the like button, show some support. Candace, just give us a little rundown again of who you are and how people can find you.
Sure, you can find me at Candace Kelly TV. I'm on Instagram. as well as Facebook, CANDACEKELLEY TV. I teach the law. I like to talk about the law, and I'm very interested in people knowing about their rights. I covered Sean back in the day, and this is like kind of full circle to see exactly what this comes to be, because the media and the celebrity look much different to 2.5 decades ago. It's much different than it is today. And I've been doing a lot of comparing as to kind of how the two, how to kind of look at the two as, you juxtapose them together. And it's been interesting to think about how everything is going so far.
Okay, so we just had court, right, the last day, and Capricorn is the person, his employee, that called Cassie to let them know that Diddy was inside of Kid Cudi's house. It was brought up in opening statements that Capricorn, I believe, was kidnapped. And it
Mm-hmm.
looks like tomorrow when we go to court, that's going to be laid out. What effect that would play on this RICO part?
So it's going to play a big part, because it's going to be one of the predicate acts that, if you kidnap someone, that then you now check one of those boxes for RICO. This is someone who, she said, or according to the other testimony, was taken against her will, and felt that there was no way for her to leave. It didn't matter how long. People think of kidnapping, it's like, oh, you're thrown into some basement for 3 months. Kidnapping can happen for a very short time. You can be kidnapped or false imprisoned, for 10 minutes, and that would reach the threshold. Apparently, she was picked up, driven to the home, went into the home, called Kid Cudi, and then a lot of other things happened. So that is probably something that the prosecutors are going to chalk up and describe as kidnapping when they connect the dots. Her testimony is going to be very important, because what does she have to gain, or she only has to lose from this? So if she comes, she's going to be a very compelling witness. Because why in the world would you, as a, maybe what was Sean, maybe then 50, maybe at the time, why are you taking people, allegedly, from their home, breaking into other people's homes? Again, she might have had the key, but he was not allowed in. So you're breaking and entering, and then taunt somebody from afar and put their dog in. I mean, it just sounds it sounds like a movie. So she's going to be a very important witness for everybody to understand what was going on. I think that we'll find that what went on is just what we thought went on, which is not going to be good for Sean Combs.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern when it comes to role models that we look up to in the Black community. Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Sean Diddy Combs, Suge Knight. A lot of men are in prison that during our lifetime, they were big stars and now they're behind bars. Do you think that this is systematic or just bad actors?
So I will say this, that when it comes to the industry of Black music and hip hop, this isn't something that, let's take R. Kelly, for example. How many free R. Kelly throngs of people did you have, where a lot of women who were fighting for R. Kelly, having seen the tape, having heard 3-part documentaries of all these women? It is very difficult for people, Black or white, but especially in the Black community. I mean, we love our superstars. Again, that's anybody, but since we're talking about the Black community, all the nostalgia, everything that we've grown up with, now we have to recontextualize our whole childhoods about these people. Every time you listen to a Faith Evans song or watch The Cosby Show, that is not easy for people to let go of and accept, because we know that it took those people extra to get to where they are. We also know that there's systematic racism. We also know that when we go get a mortgage, we can't do it like other people, or that when we get an education, we can't do it like other people if it's an all Black school and an inner city community. So we know these things to be true, and we hold out hope for people that we love and idolize and consider role models. But the truth is that when you look at R. Kelly and all the evidence that was built up against him, that it's not something that we were willing to accept, and that isn't acceptable. We cannot expect that we don't hold people accountable for what they do. And quite frankly, the hip hop industry so far, yes, you have R. Kelly and you have Young Thug. On a whole, the numbers that we're looking at in terms of the people that we've heard come forth and say, hey, I was abused by this person, or raped by this person, because there are plenty of other documentaries. We have not gotten to our community the way that they've done in the music industry or the TV industry. There's no reason why people, and I understand why. Again, there's nostalgia people like R. Kelly. But if you've seen the tape, and there are plenty of people, including me, have seen R. Kelly doing something to a little girl, right? Excretions. Well, I mean, why would we excuse him? That is unacceptable. And that's a training that we have to get out of. And that happens within all types of families, that we just can't acknowledge the bad things that go on because it's difficult. And we actually have to do better. We actually have to say, you know what? If Sean Combs was doing this, this was a problem.
Okay, so one final question, and I'll let you go. You've done wonderful, and I really appreciate you doing this. I'm telling you, I really do.
Sure.
So we're going back to the RICO again, Racketeer Influence and Corruption Organization Act. So let's say they come back and they say, "Hey, you're guilty of RICO." Diddy's a billionaire with a lot of assets. What does that look like from the government standpoint? What will they take from him and what they can't take from him?
Mm-hmm. They will take everything from him.
What?
Anything, they will take everything: houses, cars, money, everything. So
But he
there's
has kids, though. He has kids. It don't matter.
so they'll take it all. Now they have forfeiture for I can't say the word. They have people to come help you in this situation. Forfeiture specialists that will come. I read an article that he perhaps already got someone in order to help with that. Folks can Google that, because you do want someone to figure out, all right, well, how is this going to happen, right? Do I just leave my kids with no money? How does that happen? What happens during plea deals, and this is why people thought, well, why in the world didn't he just take a plea deal? So there have been plea deals out. Do you remember Praz from Praz and Lauryn Hill, the Fugees?
Right.
Now that wasn't a RICO case, but he got in trouble, and they offered him a plea deal. And I think it was, listen, all of your monies, they can be taken, but as a part of this plea deal, serve this time, and when you get out, we'll actually give you $10 million. And that way nothing will be taken away. And he didn't accept that. Now, we don't know what Sean Combs' plea deal looked like, but I'm sure it was a mixture of things that allowed him to keep a little money, but also serve time and also plead guilty to X, Y, and Z. He decided, no, I'm going to chance everything. I'm going to chance giving everything to the government, because they can seize anything that came out of this criminal enterprise, meaning all of his businesses. So all of that could be taken away. Some people might say, well, that would have been enough for me to take the deal. He took a chance. And so here we are.
Wow. So, from your experience and sitting in the courtroom, really following this case, looking at all of the transcripts, going over it twice and three times, that's what we're doing basically. How do you feel about this case so far? How it's shaping up, um, just from a professional standpoint, as far as a RICO trial goes?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think that so far the prosecution is in a very steady, stable position, but the door is still open for Sean Combs to make his case. Why? One thing that could potentially happen, and I say this now because I do feel like the prosecution is making its case, and I've said that this is nuts before, he could take the stand. He could just go out there and just give it all to God and say, you know what, let me explain myself. That would also give him the opportunity to, if he does if he is found guilty, to provide some mitigating facts about him. At one point in the trial, we hear that he's bipolar. This is something that they honed in on, but honed in on enough to where they could bring it up in closing arguments or bringing up in some type of sentencing phase that this is a guy who's not only a drug addict, but he's bipolar. I don't know. There might be a lot of things that will come out if he does take the stand. I still think it's a terrible idea. But if things go the way that they continue to go for the prosecution, and they do kind of start to kind of pick holes in what people are saying, but not enough for the whole ship to sink, the defense might have to think of another way of doing this. And I would be surprised if you took the stand, but I could see conceptually the logic. So that's my takeaway so far. And we've got 3 weeks to go. We've got a lot more witnesses, but I think they've laid the major foundation. And now they're just going to be bringing corroborating witnesses as they have since Cassie testified.
All right. So, everyone, we have a legal analyst here that teaches at a university. This is a rare moment in time for you to come up and ask questions. Before I let the next person come up, her name is Jacqueline. I just want to tell a quick story.
Okay.
My first day to court, and I show up. I don't know really what to expect. I did go to the Trump trial, but this is much different, less organized, I would say. But anyway, the lady that's coming up, her name is Jacqueline. She gave me paper, said, take notes. These are the questions that they're asking the juror. You want to take these questions down and look for these answers. We have 45 more jurors to choose. And she really broke it down. She was out there schooling people. Also, I put out a video. It's on this channel and also on my TikTok. It's all called Watching the World. I filmed Diddy's daughters coming out of the courthouse, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they look marvelous,
Yeah.
incredible, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Jacqueline was telling everybody 6 feet. That's her in the video. When you go watch the video, this is her telling everybody respect these girls and so forth, because everybody's trying to run them over like a herd of
Yeah.
cattle, and they're so graceful, but the media, they don't really care. So anyway, Jacqueline, come on up and tell us, ask your questions, and first tell us about you for a minute, just a minute, because I know you can go, and then ask your question.
Hi, thank you, Mel and Mr. Smith, and hi, Candace. I met you the other day.
Oh,
Mr.
hello. How are you?
Good. Can't complain, but I won't. Thank you for having me up, and I'm just the general public. I just have watched Sean Diddy Combs in the music industry and have seen him display Black excellence. I'm a fan, and I'm also not biased. So I'm just spectating from the overcrowd room, just like all the press, except for Mr. Smith. He gets to sit inside with Diddy.
He gets in, does he not? He gets in.
Huh? What'd
Yeah.
you say, Miss Hill?
I said he certainly gets in. He will always get in. I'm just wondering, as you know, from your perspective, because you really are, this a potential juror in a way. I mean, they wouldn't have picked me. I'm already, I'm on the domestic violence response team. I'm skewed, but I'm wondering is what your perceptions are right now of the case.
Well, I think Diddy was off from the moment. I'll just let's say, because nobody else has heard, but the judge did say made up tape. My question to you, I'll come back to it, had to do with the wallet. If you can remind me if I forget. Okay. But he said made up tape, 4:14 p.m. May 5th, 2025. Quote, made up tape, end quote. And that once the judge said that, I said, oh man, this case is kind of skewed. After Cassie gave her testimony, between her giving her testimony and saying that she was exposed to this trauma therapy that showed her outcomes of her trauma, it finished her trauma. That right there was skewed. Between Dawn shaking her head no to yes questions, that was skewed. Between the Homeland Security alleged security person that was supposed to be taking witness. Well, what was she supposed to be doing? Being a photographer, but she was busy in the room answering. She was on the stand answering questions about bull cash, which she and handling evidence without gloves on. If you noticed, the pictures changed in the hotel room for the evidence. One hallway for his closet said A, then the next hallway they showed had a B, and the next hallway they showed had a C. And this was all supposed to be from Diddy's closet that they were taking pictures of from the Intercontinental Century Hotel. So I'm like, all right, which hotel room are they taking pictures of?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, do you think that the prosecution has made the case that he paid prostitutes for sex?
No, because once the prosecution introduced this case from the first day, they asked two questions. They asked Cassie, if we say Sean, do you know who we're referring to?
Yeah.
Is it okay to use Sean? And she said, yeah. And then she said Big Sean at one point. And then that threw me off. So then for them to prove the case. Now, remind me again what you said, because I had the other point. You asked me, can the prosecution prove what exactly?
I said, do you think that the prosecution has already proven that he was paying for prostitutes, basically, that he was paying for sex?
Well, Cassie paid for all of it, right? Cassie,
yes. Right? That he and Cassie paid for sex.
Well, yeah. Cassie was initiating the payments, and what I was going to say is that the prosecution called it Wild Night, Hotel Night, and Freak Off, and they never reverted back to a Wild Night or a Hotel Night. They always questioned with Freak Off, Freak Off, Freak Off, and never brought up the personal hotel nights, like with the one with the baby oil and in the little kiddie pool in the hotel. That was a hotel night. But they didn't differentiate. They were not prepared. And if you notice, the judge, Your Honorable Aaron Subramanian, chastised them. I'm paraphrasing. However, he did use the words ambiguous tactics. Do you remember hearing that?
I do. And I also remember that at one point they were having trouble in terms of preparation, just technologically speaking, trying to get it all together. Yeah, they were.
Right. Yeah.
No,
that's my thing. They in paraphrasing, I'm definitely paraphrasing when I say that this is what the judge said. You guys didn't have your facts together. You set this man up to destroy him, and you did not intend on the first week of this jury selection to be so aggressive. Let's just use the word aggressive, because the general public came out, news reporters came out, the grassroots came out, Black people came out to support, and weren't allowing just a Black man's legacy to be tarnished and just disavowed, like Bill Cosby and you know. Oh, you know what I wanted to say?
What's
ask you? I came up here to ask you, did you hear about the charges being dismissed for Sean John Combs, Justin Combs, and Cuba Gooding Jr.?
No, I did not. In fact, I just Googled him today and I didn't see that come up, because I was looking at the other dozens of cases that Sean Combs will have to entertain after this. And I know that there was a whole incident with him and someone on a boat. You're saying that was dismissed? I haven't heard that or seen that.
That happens the second week. I want to say the second week, the first week of trial after, so that would have been the week of May 11th. The charges were dismissed. And I was privy to see that somewhere. They said there was so much evidence against the person complaining against Mr. Cuba Gooding Jr., Sean Combs, and Justin Combs that it was just dismissed. So then They said that the basis of this trial towards Sean John Combs was based on that. So if that was dismissed, then they have no trafficking, because that was based off of trafficking, and I guess the bribery part.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember the
Racketeering.
trafficking. Yeah, the trafficking here is separate and apart, and I definitely have to look that up because I'm not sure of that. I definitely will follow up. But in terms of the trafficking and forcing someone, for this case, I mean, obviously that's still open. But I just think that Cassie, in her having been a part of those financial transactions that you're talking about, that the prosecution is saying that trickled down from Sean. Again, tying it to Sean. So that's what I think people should remember and look for. Yes, she was a part of those transactions. The jury will ask, was she forced to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay,
but I mean,
this is my first time on live, so I'm not looking at the camera. Now I'm looking at the camera. You guys are down here. Okay.
Right. All good.
All right, very good. Well, we're going to see you tomorrow at court. I just want to ask one final question for you, Jacqueline, and then I will turn my attention to you, Candace.
Okay.
Jacqueline, just the vibe from the people that you're surrounded by going in and out of the courtroom every day, do you think people at large think Diddy is going to walk out of this not guilty, or do you think people are pessimistic?
It's a mix. You have people sitting outside the courtroom just upset with him. The people that hold the spaces for the celebrities or the press, the space savers, they're disgruntled. Several of them. I can't tell. You've got someone's sister that's one of Diddy's artists. Her brother passed away, was one of Diddy's artists, rappers, and she's giggling all in the courtroom. This is really a man's life. This is really a man's life that we're dealing with here. There shouldn't be any giggles in the courtroom, and the entire courtroom, including the judge, everybody's just giggling as if this black man's life is not serious. I mean, I can't take it. I leave. The last two times I've left the courtroom for about the end of the day, from 11:30 a.m. until you guys let out at 3. I'm outside. It's a little. What is the word? Scrupulous. I don't know. I just come out
more serious in court. Want to be more serious in court?
Yeah, I mean, it should be. There shouldn't be any giggles when you come into racketeering, bribery, sex trafficking. And I'm not going to even play myself and say for anybody. For this black man, there's so many people out here walking around that's doing the same thing that are white and from other countries, Caribbean, and they get away with it daily. You got happy endings in the Asian shops. They get away with it daily, but then they get an anti-Asian hate crime bill. Where's the anti-black hate crime bill? This man is sitting here and people are laughing, giggling, the judge making jokes. It's nasty. It's really nasty. It's not okay.
All right. Well, thank you for your viewpoint. And Candace, I just want to ask you, in your circles and dealing with colleagues and so forth, what are people saying on a high level?
That he's going to jail.
Really?
No, yeah, that's it. That he's definitely going to jail.
Wow. Now,
I mean, that's it. It's not. It's like, oh no, he's definitely going. It's just a matter of how much time.
Okay. Well, I think everyone needs to go with him.
What's that?
Right.
I think everyone needs to go with him. If that's the case, everyone needs to go. All of them. The person that owns Bad Boy Rights, him too, Mr. V, everybody needs to go.
Yeah. Listen, as I said, RICO was made to get that crime boss. But I hear your point. I definitely do. How is everybody not, a part of it? That happens to be the law that is on the books. Not an explanation that will make everybody happy, but it is the truth.
Okay. Listen, I want to thank you guys for coming on, and Jacqueline, it means a lot too to have you. You have
Thank
such a strong presence at the courthouse, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well. Candace, I'm telling
Yes.
you, what you've done is historic because we have solid information coming from somebody that actually, again, tell us what you do one more time.
All right. I teach the law. I'm also a legal commentator, legal analyst. And this is what I do. I'm at Candace Kelly TV, CandaceKelley TV on Instagram and on YouTube. So I like to allow people to know what the law is. So information is there for you.
Well, we
That
thank you
sounds
so much. Jacqueline, where can we find you at?
well. I'm on Jacqueline Candor Williams, JACQUELINE, quote CANDOR, end quote WILLIAMS on Facebook, Candor CANDOR _2024 on Instagram, and Candor 2085 on X.com.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Candace, would you like to give us some final words before we close?
You know, the final words are read the law, everybody, so that you can understand that what the media has done in engaging us to understand what RICO is as it relates to the mob might be incorrect, because otherwise, you know, you're just out there talking. But if you really want to talk about the facts and understand it, not just for this, but it might be someone in your family, right? To understand what the law is actually about so that you can really articulate what all this evidence means, as opposed to the emotions, which I know is one part of it. It is a lot, but get to know the law through this process. It's a good process to understand what's going on in the world.
I know it's very hard to navigate through a lot of people that are putting out false and salacious information every day after court. The same video that I had mentioned previously, where Jacqueline was telling everybody to get away from Diddy's daughters,
Mm-hmm.
people came out and they put in the media that his daughters were escaping the courthouse.
Hmm.
Like, how crazy is that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very important for me to try to bring solid information as close as we can get it to the truth out so that everybody can kind of get a sense of where this case is going. I think it's wonderful to have a legal analyst on to break down the RICO and racketeering and the Mann Act. These are terms that most of us as everyday civilians probably would just never run into. And hopefully the feds wouldn't come knocking
Yeah.
at your door with these type of charges, right?
No,
So,
absolutely.
so I want to thank everybody for participating in our live stream tonight, watching the world. We have some other shows coming through. Candace specializes in domestic violence, and we look down on that. We don't want to see women getting punched in the face, punched in the stomach, like the allegations that are in this case. It should never happen. I have a daughter, and believe me, brother, you don't want that kind of smoke. I'm telling you what I know.
Oh yeah.
But any type of abuse is bad, and we're going to be addressing it. She's going to come on and really break down domestic violence and how that's an issue in many places, and something that we need to take a look at. And we're seeing it on a grand scale, on a high level with this case. We're also going to do a show in the near future, maybe perhaps next weekend. We're going to talk about, in fact, I'm going to invite you guys to come up during the week after court. If you're there, we can maybe do in the evening around 7 or 8. We'll just do a little brainstorm, tell everybody what we heard, and that way they get it fresh off the press. But next weekend, we're going to do a show strictly about the defense of Diddy. We're going to
Mm.
look at it from defending him and how that would work, just so you can understand how the defense world work, right?
No, that's true.
Um,
That's true.
right. Candace, could you just give us just a little insight on how that type of show, what we could perhaps do just to show how defense of anyone can happen? Because he has four different defense teams, I believe.
Yeah, so I think at this point he's up to 9 attorneys, and it's you have to look at the defense too, right? Because when we talk about the Sixth Amendment and one's right to a trial by jury, it's for the defendant to make sure that all of their rights are respected. A right to a speedy jury. So, or right to a speedy process. So I think that it's important to look at Sean, because what we hear are all of the other facts. We hear about, the Punisher and all the people who have been allegedly sex trafficked and the beating, and we've got the tape. It will be interesting to look and see, hey, what will the jury be considering on the other side? Will there be some character witnesses? Will he take the stand? How will the jurors perceive these emails, and whether or not the forensic expert that we heard, or a psychologist, will have any bearing on what the people in deliberation will be thinking about. So it's good to look at the defense. This is why we have the system set up the way we do, so that those who are accused, because sometimes people are accused and it's a lie. Those who are accused, they have someone can represent them. He's paying for it, but you get an attorney for free. You have a right to a speedy trial. All of these things are for the defendant. So it'll be good to look at what's potentially in store for him.
Can I ask a quick question about that, Mr. Smith? Or Candace?
Yeah.
Is there a clause in the Constitution, something about that Diddy should not be in jail while he's waiting for his trial, or something of that nature?
Right. Oh my goodness. So you're really making me think about. So what we want is we want to make sure that people are not held against their will for any reason. However, when we're talking about, bail and agreements, and whether or not somebody might be a flight risk or might be a detriment to the community at some point, that's where the problem came in, and where he was not able to go home. The judge alluded to some witness tampering. The judge alluded to potential flight risk, even though he did quite a few things in order to put up, I believe it was $50 million. So in this particular case, the judge has discretion to determine whether or not he's going to be free or not during the time of the trial. Now, let's say he gets convicted. As many people know, he's going to get time served, and that will be taken off his sentence for the time that he's already served. And that's how that plays into it. But they did not trust Sean Combs. That is what the court system was saying. We don't trust you on many levels, and therefore you have to stay behind bars during this trial.
Wow. And how many years is he facing?
So on the Mann Act, up to 10 years, on the RICO Act, up to 20 years, and on the sex trafficking, up to 15 years. So he's got 2 counts of the Mann Act, 2 counts of the trafficking, and 1 count of the RICO. I mean, he could if he gets convicted on all, he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life.
I don't have, I can't really think of anything else to ask. That was the one thing that I was unsure about. Someone had told me it was because it was RICO that it nulled that part or clause in the Constitution. So
yeah, no, the judge happened not to trust him based upon what was argued by the prosecution.
Although the judge seemed to be a huge fan of
Yeah,
Diddy.
listen. I think it's hard not to be. I mean, this is the music that defined us. Judge Subramanian is, in our age group. He knows those words to be small. He knows them, So, that's not unusual. That's not unusual in this case. And I think that's what all of us are feeling. Wow. It not only defined hip hop, but it probably defined his music, defined a part of our lives. And that's hard to face. So listen, saying you're a fan, I think that's going to be the most of us.
All right. So we're having a really bad storm where I'm at. So that's why I keep getting booted off. So
okay.
I thought you were dropping off on purpose. All right.
No.
All right. I want to follow because I'd like to hear more legal advice, because it's more important to hear from a legal standpoint than some random. I mean, I'm like just random. Like I have some knowledge to ask questions. That's it. But the expertise part I lack.
Yeah, and so that's the best, that you have the questions and that you want to know. that's what makes this good. These types of conversation and this really process of civic duty that people have. Doors of the courtroom are open for people like you and me to come in and to make sure that the justice system is doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm just really glad that you're even going in and are interested, because all court systems need eyes on them to make sure that they're acting on the right side of the law. And that's what we're doing, and that's our responsibility.
All right. So thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate having you. I look forward to during the week. Let's convene and talk about what happens perhaps tomorrow or Wednesday. Maybe we'll check in Thursday, but we're going to be coming back repeatedly to bring the news to the people, especially on the weekend. Thank you guys for tuning in to Watching the World, where we bring you information straight from the courthouse. And not only that, I'm bringing you information from legal experts. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Not gossip, but we're bringing you solid truth, and you're able to put it up against the law and come to a reasonable conclusion about what you think about this trial, whether you're for Diddy or you're for or not. You could balance out the information and know where this trial is headed. So thank you very much. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks so much, Mel. All right.
Bye-bye.